All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today we're exploring a seriously cool, pun absolutely intended, way to slash the staggeringly high cost of mechanical cooling in buildings. It's a fascinating technique known as free cooling. You see, mechanical cooling systems use massive amounts of energy, so anytime we can literally just let nature do the work for us, we absolutely want to take advantage of it.
But let's actually kick this off with a bit of a brain teaser. Imagine your building is sitting at a very comfortable 75 degrees Fahrenheit. Outside, it's 77 degrees. Would you bring that warmer 77-degree outdoor air inside to cool down your 75-degree room? It sounds completely backward, doesn't it? Well, keep this scenario in the back of your mind, because we're going to solve this exact puzzle by the end of our time together, and the answer might genuinely surprise you.
To get there, though, we first got to understand the technology running behind the scenes. An air economizer is a vital component of modern HVAC systems. Its entire job is to pull in outdoor air to cool a building for free, taking the load off those expensive mechanical systems. But the economizer can't just operate blindly, right? It needs what we call high-limit strategies. Think of these strategies as the brains of the operation. They're the logic controllers deciding when the outdoor air is actually good enough to bring inside, and when those dampers need to slam shut to keep the bad air out.
Okay, up first is strategy number 1, the fixed dry bulb strategy. This is pretty much the absolute simplest approach out there. The real beauty of this strategy? It's just so incredibly straightforward. It relies on a single basic temperature sensor placed right in the outdoor airstream, and it completely ignores humidity. It acts just like a standard thermometer, taking the sensible air temperature and comparing it to a fixed, predetermined number. And because it's just one basic sensor, it's super cheap to install and requires almost zero ongoing maintenance.
So how does this actually play out in the real world? Well, optimal set points completely depend on where you are on the map. Take a moderate climate like the US Mid-Atlantic, climate zone 4A, for example. The limit there might be set at 69 degrees. If it's 68 degrees outside, the system kicks on and brings in that free cooling. But the second it hits 71, the system realizes, nope, too warm, shuts the outdoor dampers, and turns the mechanical AC back on. Now, if you're in a much drier area, say zones 1B through 5B, you can actually afford to push that limit up to 73 degrees.
But here's the catch, and it's a big one: humidity. A fixed dry bulb literally cannot feel moisture, so it might see 68 degrees outside and happily open the vents, completely blind to the fact that it's sitting at 80% relative humidity. It just pulled cool, damp air into your building, forcing your system to work overtime to dehumidify that massive latent energy load. In humid climates, like down in Zone 1A in Miami, this could lead to unacceptable indoor humidity and, worst case, severe mold risks. On the flip side, on a warm but super dry day at 73 degrees and 30% humidity, it might just shut off prematurely, completely missing out on great cooling opportunities. Oh, and add in a standard sensor and accuracy of plus or minus 2 degrees. Yeah, your energy bills can definitely take a hit. So to fix those rigid limitations, engineers came up with method number 2, the differential dry bulb strategy, otherwise known as the dynamic upgrade. Now, adding a second sensor totally changes the game here. While the fixed strategy only looks outside, this differential strategy slaps a second sensor on the return air coming from inside the building. This lets the system compare the two and make dynamic, real-time choices based on actual indoor conditions. It basically just asks one question: is it cooler outside than it is inside? If yes, open the vents. This is honestly brilliant for a building with unpredictable internal heat loads, like a big data center in dry Denver. If those servers are running hot and the return air hits 75, but it drops to 70 outside, the system happily sucks in that cool air. But take this to humid Atlanta, and relying strictly on temperature comparisons can be a total disaster. The outdoor air might technically be cooler than the indoor air, but if it's loaded with moisture, it's going to crank your indoor relative humidity to damaging levels above 60%. Plus, because you're using two sensors now, you're actually compounding their potential for error, amplifying that inaccuracy to plus or minus 4 degrees. In fact, because of those doubled inaccuracies and the serious mold risks from unchecked moisture, strict energy standards like ASHRAE 90.1 actually flat out ban this two-sensor strategy in warm, moist climates, stretching all the way from zone 1A to 6A. It just forces the mechanical cooling system to work way too hard, fixing the damp air it accidentally invited inside. All right, so how do we finally defeat our hidden villain of humidity? Enter strategy number 3, the fixed enthalpy strategy, which focuses on measuring total heat.
To make this work, we have to ditch that basic dry bulb thermometer for a much more sophisticated combination sensor. Enthalpy is essentially the total heat content of the air. It combines sensible heat, which is the temperature you actually feel, and latent heat, which is the moisture or humidity in the air. By measuring both of those together, this strategy compares the outdoor air's total energy to a fixed limit, usually somewhere around 28 BTUs per pound of dry air.
Let's imagine a hospital in Chicago to see this in action. Say it's 70 degrees outside. If the relative humidity is a nice, comfortable 40%, the total enthalpy is only 25 BTUs per pound. That is well below our 28 BTU limit, so the Economizer enables and pulls in that sweet, free cooling. But let's say a storm rolls in. The humidity spikes to 80% at that exact same 70-degree temperature. The enthalpy jumps up to 32 BTUs. Boom. The system is smart enough to immediately disable those dampers, blocking all that excess moisture from getting into the hospital. But yeah, there's always a but, right? The plot twist here is that while enthalpy sounds flawless on paper, it's pretty heavily flawed in practice. Enthalpy sensors are notoriously finicky. They've got high inaccuracy rates of plus or minus 2 BTUs per pound, and even worse, those humidity sensors drift out of calibration really easily over time. That seriously drives up maintenance costs because they need constant recalibration. Also, while it's fantastic in Chicago, this strategy is frankly a massive waste of money in dry places like Albuquerque, where a cheap, simple dry bulb system would do the exact same job without all the added headaches. Which brings us right to the climax of our explainer, Part 4, the warm air paradox. It is time to bust a major temperature myth. All right, let's circle back to that crazy opening question I asked you at the very beginning. We're going to pit 75-degree indoor return air against slightly warmer 77-degree outdoor air. But here are the missing details I withheld earlier. That 75-degree inside air is sitting at 50% relative humidity. The warmer 77-degree outside air is much drier, sitting at only 30% relative humidity. And boom, this perfectly illustrates the magic of enthalpy. When we look at the total heat content, that 75-degree indoor air works out to about 28 BTUs per pound. But that warmer 77-degree outdoor air, because it's so much drier, its total heat content is only 25 BTUs per pound. So despite being literally warmer on a standard thermometer, the 77-degree air actually contains less total heat. So the huge takeaway here is this. If you are running a simple dry bulb strategy, the computer would see 77 outside and 75 inside, and it would flat out reject the outdoor air because it thinks it's too warm. It would make the wrong choice. But in enthalpy-based control, it sees that bringing in that 77-degree air actually takes far less energy for the mechanical system to cool down. It accepts the air, saving you massive amounts of energy. And honestly, this specific scenario happens all the time in dry or semi-arid climates. So wrapping things up with Section 5, choosing your climate strategy. It really is a massive balancing act. As you can probably guess by now, there is no magic bullet here. There's no universal best strategy, because what saves you thousands of dollars in Denver could cause an absolute mold catastrophe in Miami. Designing a building's high-limit strategy is tough. Engineers have to perform incredibly rigorous site-specific analyses. They've got to weigh the climate zones, strictly adhere to those ASHRAE 90.1 energy standards, and balance the cheap upfront costs of dry bulb systems against the humidity-taming but high-maintenance enthalpy systems, all while making sure the indoor air quality remains safe and comfortable for everybody inside. So, knowing what you know now about the sneaky, dramatic impact of humidity and that whole warm air paradox, take a good look at your own local weather patterns. If you were designing a smart building in your hometown today, which strategy would you choose to optimize your energy efficiency? Think about it, and keep exploring how the hidden physics of the air around us constantly shape the built environment.